They say loyalty is quiet. It doesn't beg to be seen. It just stays, even when love doesn't. For years, I believed that if you gave your heart honestly, it would be enough. But I learned, some people don't recognize loyalty until they've already destroyed it. Until they've already destroyed you. Before I take you into this story, my story, please, if you've ever stayed loyal to someone who forgot your worth, like this video, subscribe, and stay with me till the end. Because I promise, this isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about what happens when a woman learns that her silence can be louder than her pain. I met Armin when I was 23. He wasn't perfect, but he made me believe in something real. We didn't have much, but we had each other. He used to call me his calm, said that when the world got too loud, he found peace in my voice. And I believed him. I remember the night we got married. It wasn't fancy, just close family, laughter, and cheap decorations that smelled of jasmine and rain. I wore a white dress I'd stitched myself. Armin held my hand and whispered, "We'll build our own world, Meher. Just you and me." That promise stayed with me. Through every night he came home tired, every bill we struggled to pay, every meal we shared from the same plate. I gave up a lot for him. My career, my dreams, even the little spark that once belonged to me alone. I thought that's what love meant, sacrificing until there's nothing left of you but the reflection of someone else's happiness. But people change, and sometimes they don't even notice when they do. It started with small things. Missed dinners, forgotten birthdays, his phone, always turned away. The way his laughter started to sound different, lighter, freer, but never with me. I used to tell myself, he's just busy, he's tired. But deep down, I could feel it. That quiet distance that creeps in and turns love into obligation. Then one night, he came home later than usual. I was sitting on the couch, waiting, like always. The smell of burnt candles filled the air because I'd been hoping for dinner together. He didn't even look at me when he said, "Meher, we need to talk." Those were words, cold, sharp. Final. He told me he'd met someone, that she made him feel alive again, that she understood him in ways I no longer did. I remember every detail, the tremor in his voice, the guilt that never reached his eyes, the way he avoided looking at the wedding ring still on his hand. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just nodded, because what could I say? That I'd been alive to. Once, before I built my entire world around him. He moved out within a week. Just like that, a marriage dissolved into silence. I watched as he started a new life, pictures of vacations, smiles, and a baby on the way. His new family. People told me to move on. "You're better off," they said. But no one saw the nights I sat on the floor, surrounded by memories that no longer belonged to me. No one heard the way my heart would break every morning when I realized I'd made breakfast for someone who wasn't coming home. It took me months to accept it, to stop waiting for the sound of his keys in the door, to stop checking my phone for messages that never came. One day, I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. My eyes were dull, my spirit gone. That's when I realized I'd given him too much. I had handed him my happiness and expected him to keep it safe. That was my mistake. So I started over, quietly. I got a job. Nothing glamorous, but it was mine. I worked late, learned new skills, started saving. I traveled for work, something I never did before. Slowly, I began to remember what it felt like to breathe without permission. Years passed. The pain didn't vanish, but it softened. It became part of me, like an old scar that no longer hurts, but still tells a story. Then, one day, fate brought Armin back. It was at a charity event. I was there to present my company's donation, something I had built from scratch. He was in the audience, older, tired, but familiar. Our eyes met, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger, just peace. After the event, he approached me. His voice trembled when he said, "Meher, you look different." I smiled. I guess life changes everyone. He told me about his life, his new family, the one he left me for. The smile faded when he said his wife had left him. Took the kids. He looked broken. I thought I found happiness, he said softly, but I lost everything that ever mattered. And in that moment, I didn't see the man who betrayed me. I saw a man haunted by the ghost of his own choices. I didn't say, "I told you so." I didn't need to. My silence carried more truth than any words ever could. Before leaving, he whispered, "You were always the loyal one. Meher, I just didn't deserve it." I turned to him and said, "Loyalty isn't something you earn, Armin. It's something you keep safe. And once it's broken, it never comes back the same." That was the last time we spoke today. I live in a small apartment overlooking the city lights. I run my own business. I travel. I laugh again. I fall asleep with peace instead of fear. Sometimes I think about the past, not with bitterness, but gratitude. Because losing him taught me what loyalty really means. It's not about staying when you're unloved. It's about standing tall even when your world falls apart. He chose his new family over me, but I chose myself over my pain. And that made all the difference. You know what the hardest part was? It wasn't losing Armin. It wasn't even watching him build a new life while I picked up the broken pieces of mine. It was realizing that I had become invisible, not just to him, but to myself. For months, I lived in silence, the kind that eats away at you slowly until even your own reflection feels like a stranger. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, reaching for someone who wasn't there anymore. My hands would land on cold sheets, and my heart would sink all over again. Sometimes, I'd scroll through his pictures online, him with his new wife, his new family. Their smiles looked like everything mine used to be. But I learned something important about smiles. They can lie still. It hurt. God, it hurt more than anything. People around me started to treat me differently. Friends avoided me, not because they didn't care, but because heartbreak makes people uncomfortable. They don't know what to say to a woman who's quietly breaking, so they say nothing at all. I became a ghost in my own world. But one night changed everything. It was raining, the kind of heavy rain that makes the city lights look like melting stars. I was sitting by the window, staring at my reflection in the glass, when I whispered to myself, "Enough. Enough of crying for someone who forgot what I was worth. Enough of letting pain define who I am. Enough of surviving." I wanted to live. So I started small. I joined a course online, business management. I didn't know much, but I wanted to learn. I worked part-time at a cafe during the day, studied at night, and slowly started to build something again. Not for anyone else, but for me. The first time I got my paycheck, it wasn't much, but I remember holding it and crying. Not because of the money, but because it was mine, my effort, my independence. Days turned into months. I stopped looking for him online. I stopped waiting for his messages, and slowly, the silence that once broke me became my strength. One evening, while walking home, I saw him across the street, Armin. He didn't see me. He was with his wife, holding their little girl. I froze. For a moment, everything came rushing back. The memories, the pain, the love. But then, I smiled, because I realized I didn't need to be a part of that picture anymore. I wasn't jealous. I wasn't angry. I just didn't care the way I used to. That night, I sat by my window again, but this time, instead of tears, I felt something else, peace. The kind of peace that comes when you finally stop chasing what was never meant to stay. I focused on my growth. I worked harder. I started freelancing, offering virtual assistant services online. It began small, just a few clients, but I poured my heart into it. Every time someone said thank you or you did great, I felt pieces of myself returning. The woman who once thought she couldn't survive without love was now standing tall, without needing anyone's validation. A year later, I started my own company, Loyal Hands Virtual Solutions. The name meant something personal to me. It was my way of reclaiming a word that once broke me, loyalty. One afternoon, as I was preparing for a meeting, I received an unexpected message. It was from Armin. At first, I didn't believe it. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding the way it used to. But this time, not from love, from control. Meher. It's been a while. The message read. I didn't reply, but curiosity, that old weakness, made me scroll further. He wrote, I just wanted to say, I'm proud of you. I heard about your company. You deserve all the success. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at the words. Then I laughed softly to myself, not out of joy, not out of anger, but out of realization. The man who once said I wasn't enough was now watching me from afar, realizing that I had become everything he thought I couldn't be. That night, I wrote in my journal, he replaced me to feel powerful. I replaced pain with purpose, and that's real power. Months went by again. Life moved forward. Until one evening, I received a call from a mutual friend. Armin's company had gone bankrupt. His wife had left him. He was living with his parents again. There was a strange silence in me, not satisfaction, not revenge, just a quiet acknowledgement of fate. Sometimes, life doesn't ask you to get revenge. It simply lets time reveal the truth for you. A few weeks later, I ran into him at a bookstore. He looked different, older, tired, almost fragile. He approached me carefully, as if afraid I'd vanish. You look happy, Meher, he said softly. I am, I replied, truly. He smiled, the kind of smile that hides regret. You were always stronger than I thought. I nodded. You just never looked long enough to see it. There was nothing left to say. No anger, no bitterness. Just closure, quiet, complete, and powerful. As I walked away, I realized something I wish I'd known years ago. Loyalty doesn't mean staying for someone who doesn't see your worth. It means staying true to yourself, even when everything else falls apart. That night, I came home, brewed a cup of tea, and sat by the window again, my favorite place, my quiet corner of reflection. I looked up at the stars and whispered, thank you, not to him, but to the pain that made me grow. Because without it, I would have never learned that love doesn't always come from another person. Sometimes, it comes from the version of yourself you fight to rebuild. I used to think revenge meant making someone feel the same pain they gave you. But now, sitting here years later, I realize real revenge is peace. It's walking into your own life without the weight of resentment. It's smiling genuinely when you remember the person who once made you cry. It's living so beautifully, so freely, that their absence feels like a blessing. But life has a way of circling back. Sometimes, the past doesn't stay buried. It comes knocking when you least expect it. It was a quiet morning when my phone rang. The number wasn't saved, but something about it felt familiar. I answered. A trembling voice spoke, Meher. It's Armin. For a second, time stood still. His voice, the same one that once whispered promises into my skin, now sounded fragile, hollow, almost lost. He said he wanted to meet, that it was important. And though every instinct told me to say no, my heart, That foolish, forgiving part said, "One last time." When I arrived at the cafe, I almost didn't recognize him. He was thinner. His hair had grayed at the edges. The confidence he once carried like armor was gone. He stood when he saw me, and for a brief moment, the ghost of our past hung between us. Then, quietly, he said, "You look successful." "I am," I said. My tone wasn't proud, just calm, like someone who no longer needed validation. He hesitated before speaking again. "My wife left. She took everything, the money, the house, even my clients. I've lost everything." His voice cracked, and suddenly, I saw it. The same helplessness I once carried in my own eyes years ago. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then, softly, I said, "Sometimes, life gives us back the lessons we once ignored." He looked up, his eyes tired. "You must hate me." I smiled sadly. "I don't. I used to, but not anymore. You taught me how to love myself when no one else would. I should thank you." He exhaled, almost in disbelief. "You've changed." I looked at him steadily. "No, I just found the version of myself you couldn't break." There was silence again. Not the awkward kind, but the kind filled with unspoken truths. He wanted forgiveness. I could feel it. But forgiveness isn't something you give to make someone feel better. It's something you release to set yourself free. We parted ways that day. No dramatic goodbye, no promises to stay in touch. Just a quiet understanding that some chapters don't need to be reopened, only acknowledged before closing them forever. That night, I went home and sat by the window, the same window where years ago I used to cry, whispering his name into the rain. But this time, I wasn't that broken woman anymore. My life had bloomed, not in the noise of revenge, but in the silence of becoming. Loyal Hands Virtual Solutions had grown into a respected company. I had employees now, women, mostly, those who had been told they weren't enough, just like I once was. I gave them not just jobs, but dignity, because I knew what it was like to be overlooked, undervalued, unseen. One of them, a young woman named Sarah, once told me, "You saved me." I smiled and said, "No, Sarah, I just reminded you that you were always capable of saving yourself." And in that moment, I realized that was my real purpose. Not to get revenge, not to prove Armin wrong, but to become the woman who no longer needed to be chosen to feel worthy. Months later, I was invited to speak at a business event. It was a surreal feeling, standing on a stage, looking at hundreds of faces listening to my story. Not the story of my pain, but of my transformation. After the event, as people came up to congratulate me, I noticed him, Armin, standing at the back of the room. He didn't approach. He didn't need to. Our eyes met for just a second, and in that silence, I saw it all: regret, admiration, loss. He gave a small nod. I returned it. And just like that, everything that ever broke me finally healed. Because the truth was, he didn't destroy me. He redirected me. I walked out of that hall under the night sky, the city lights reflecting in my eyes. And I thought of the girl I once was, crying in the rain, begging for love from someone who couldn't give it. I whispered to her, "You made it." Today, when people ask me what happened to my marriage, I simply say, he chose his new family over me, and I chose myself. And that choice changed everything. Because real loyalty isn't proven in staying with someone who forgets your worth. It's proven in staying true to who you are, even when the world tries to make you forget. So if you're listening to this, and you feel like your heart is breaking, remember me. Remember that woman who lost everything, only to find herself. Because one day, you'll look back and realize the pain didn't ruin you. It rebuilt you. And that, my dear, is what loyalty truly means.